Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of First Samuel in chapter 2. We ended yesterday in verse 26. I just want to do a quick recap just to remind everyone what had happened. And we are going to continue with that part of the narrative. It's about Eli. He heard that his sons were doing all the bad things to everyone. They laid with the women who served at the doorway of the tent. They really defiled the whole service of the tabernacle. Now, if you look at the narrative, it said to them, why do you do such things? Obviously, Eli wasn't happy with it. He is hearing the reports and he is telling them it is not good for what is being circulated. And so the concern of Eli wasn't so much that what they did was affecting God, but he seems to see it as if it's affecting himself. The family's name is at stake. And so in verse 25, we left off yesterday talking about how it was if one man sins another, and this word means Elohim, a judge, right? A judge will judge. Now understand that Eli was a judge. So he knows that he is a means to make things fair between two men. But if a man sins against God, then what can be done? Now, that is a concern of Eli, that he realizes that what they have done is really against God. Now, incidentally, what we see is that Eli took on his fatherly role and approached the sons, and they would not listen to their father. And so what we left off yesterday was with these words: the Lord desired to put them to death, to put an end to all these. And then we saw the contrast in verse 26 of about Samuel. He was good with the Lord and with men, mainly because this word in favor is really the word good, right? Good. And so we do see the contrast yesterday between the sons of Eli and Samuel. We continue on with verse 37. Verse 37 begins this way. Then a man of God came to Eli and said to him. Now we are not told in this text who this man of God is. But what we do know that he is very important. Very important. And he's used by God to speak to Eli. Remember, Eli is the priest. Also a very important person in this narrative. And so it was said, traditions, at least the Jewish tradition says that this man was Elkanah. Now, again, I must stress, this is Jewish traditions, all right? And they think it's Elkanah. And this man of God came and said to Eli, he says, thus says the Lord. Now, these type of expression depicts the importance. It's God. It's actually God speaking. All right? It's actually God speaking. And it's speaking through this man of God. And everything that we read from here on is understood that God is actually speaking to Eli. Now, we always have this expression, right? God, and he speaks to an intermediary. And so in the past, we had Moses, right? We had Moses, and he spoke to the children of Israel. In this passage, we have God speaking to a man of God. A man of God. Now, when you talk about a man of God, we're talking also about a how would you say, um, a godly man, right? A godly man, uh, a, a pious man. Man of God means one who is concerned about God. And we read in these two chapters, Elkanah is that godly, pious man. And this is now speaking to Eli. And so what I want to show you is the principles that God was using intermediaries. Now he doesn't just use any intermediary, and when it was to be used to speak on his behalf, we also saw God speaking to prophets. And in many cases, the things that God spoke through these people would have led them to be killed in many cases, right? And but these men of God were bold because they know that this is God's message to them, and they carry it out faithfully. And so here it says, did I? And whenever it says I, in this case, now it is God. That God clearly revealed. This is clearly, right? Clearly revealed. Not just revealed, the word in Hebrew is a very intense form. Definitely revealed, surely revealed. And God revealed himself to the house of your father. Whose father? Eli. So we're not talking about all of Israel. We're talking about the house of Eli. Now, understand this. Who is in the house of Eli? Who is Eli? Eli was the priest, right? The priest. And if he was the priest, he must have come from the lineage of Aaron. And hence, that is how we would read this. Your father would be Aaron. And when they were in Egypt, in bondage to Pharaoh's household, it is not talking about all of Israel. It is talking about your father, particularly Aaron. He says, did I, and again, I would be God, choose them from all the tribes of Israel to be my priests, the Kohanim. Now, this word choose is important because the idea of choose means that God has examined, and then from here, make a choice. So the idea, the Hebrew idea of choosing is very much an Oriental concept. Now, how do we go and choose, say, durians? We go to a durian stall, and then we go and choose the best of the durians for our own consumption. Now, obviously, today you ask the storekeeper to do that. But the idea is they would go through the durians and choose, examine, and then very much what we call pick from the lot after examining it, and they will make a choice, and that would be the choice. And so God says, I chose them from all the tribe. Who is them? The house of your father. All of these people from Aaron's descent, from all the tribes of Israel, and that would be the Levites, right? The Levites. And from the Levites, the house of Aaron. Now, we need to understand that Aaron is from the tribe of Levi, right? And so from all the tribes of Levi, tribes of Israel, Levites were chosen to serve God. Aaron was the one that is to be my priest. Now, understand this. My priest. is a very, how should we say, a very important expression. The Kohen means they would act on behalf of God to do all the ceremonies and to represent God in the tabernacle, so that the God's house, right? God's house has various rules, right? God's rules. And in this, we have the priests who will conduct and oblige God's rules. And so this is what God means. I have chosen them to be my priests for this purpose, to impose God's rules, to go up to my altar, to burn incense, to carry an effort before me. And I did, and did I not give to the house of your father all the fire offerings of the sons of Israel? This would be the burnt offerings, right? The burnt offerings. And the remains of the burnt offerings are given to the priests to consume. And that's how they were fed in a sense, right? Apart from the tithes and offerings eventually that were given, the offerings were limited to the priesthood. And so the priest was very well taken care of by God, because they are taking care of God's house, implementing God's rules. And I think we need to appreciate why the emphasis in 27-28, because we're talking to Eli, the priest. And the role of the priest is so important in the eyes of God that I want to spend some time to explain, so that we too understand as this passage moves forward. It has everything to do with the priesthood. Verse 29, he says, why do you kick at my sacrifice, my offering, which I have commanded in my dwelling? Now, what does this mean? This is the role of the priest. The idea of kick, the word kick literally means to, how should we say, it is to step on, right? The word kick is to step on. And it is an expression, it's an oriental expression, that when you step on, you actually treat as worthless. That would be how this word kick would be understood. You kick at God's sacrifice. So why did God say it's my sacrifice and my offering? Didn't the people bring the sacrifices and offerings? Yes, but it is because of God's rules, right? God's rules that sacrifices and offerings were brought. And so because it's God's rules, it's for God, in God's house, right here. And God has commanded it. That's why it is called my sacrifice and my offering. It is to be given to God. And the priests are the one who will mediate and make the offering on behalf of the people. Now, what did God have a charge against Eli? Now, the charge is, you have honored your sons above me, making yourselves fat with the choicest of every offering of my people Israel. Now, this word honor I think we should know by now the word honor. The word honor means to be heavy. I think this is what be heavy. Treat with importance, right? Treat with importance. So honor your father and mother, treat with importance. And so what Eli did was to treat their sons, uh, treat their sons above me. Basically, the word here is mimeni. Mimeni really means from me, all right? From me, above me, right? That is important. More than. It's a very important word. I just want to express this. So it means that Eli then treated with more importance the sons than God. That is how the verse should be understood. That God's charge is you honor your son above me, literally means you treated your sons more importantly than me. Now, can you imagine if you are part of the Kohanim, the priesthood, and God said that to the priest, that you are supposed to serve me, and if you are serving me, you are my servants, and you will do as you are told. So serve God makes one a servant. And to be a servant, you would listen and do as you are told by the master. And so the priest is supposed to be the servant of God. And when Eli is said to have placed importance of his sons more than or above God, and the charge is this, that you have caused yourselves to be fat. Now this is the word, right? Cause yourselves to be fat. Cause to be fat or filled up. Now, this is a very interesting word. And in case you are interested in the Hebrew, the root of this word is bara. Very much in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning, God created, and the word translated as created is the word bara. But in this case, it's in the Hifil, the causative form. Make yourselves fat, cause yourselves to be fat, cause yourselves to be filled up, cause yourself to be bara. That is what it means. It doesn't mean created, but it means to be filled up. Filled up with what? Filled up with the choices of every offering. What do you mean the choices of every offering? Again, we need to look at this word, and this word is right here, the word choices. The word choices literally means reshit. Reshit means beginning. In the beginning, that's the same word, beginning. It also means the best, right? The best part, the first part. That's what it means. So what did they do? Now, understand this. They didn't take the best part of the offering. And so we need to be very clear of that. The sons of Eli did this. They took the first part of the offering before the fire offering, before the smoke offering, before they burned the fat, because you need to understand the fat is the best part of the animal. And that in itself, they didn't touch. That was left for God on the altar. So what does it mean by the choices of every offering? They took first. And that is what the word reshit mean. They bara themselves by the reshit of every offering, every present that the people brought to God. They wanted their part first. You see, the order of the service that the priest is supposed to do is to make the offering, burn the fat, let the smoke and the aroma go up. And then they have their breast and their thigh, and that would be a very, very good part of the animal. But remember what the sons did? They wanted it first before making the offering. This is what verse 29 means. So God says, I can see exactly what they did. And so the English needs to tie back up to what the sons of Eli did. They didn't take the best part of the offering. They took it first. So the word bereshit or the word reshit here means they took it first. And they fattened themselves, they filled up themselves with the meat where they are supposed to take after God has taken it. Now, that is the complaint of God in verse 29. Coming to verse 30. Verse 30 now tells us a very specific word. Therefore. Therefore. Therefore means on this account. It's very much our English word. Therefore, in conclusion, because of what God has charged Eli, understand the father carries the blame of the sons because of what Eli didn't do. The sons have to bear their own, but Eli did not do his part. That is the charge of God. God is not punishing Eli for what the crimes and the offenses that the sons did. The sons must bear their part, obviously, but being a father, there is more responsibility, especially when you are the judge and you are also the priest of the house of God. And so God looks at Eli, the Lord God of Israel, declares. This word declare is a very important phrase. Declare means clearly, we should say clearly decree. I think that would be a good word here. Decree means God is now making a judgment, right? God is making a judgment. What did God say? I did indeed say that your house and the house of your father should walk before me forever. This means that Aaron and the house of Aaron will continue to be the priesthood. And Eli is one of them from Aaron's son called Ithamar. He has another son, Eliezer. The other two sons died, Nadav and Abihu. And so what is God saying? God is now saying this. God has made the decree that Aaron will be the priest and his whole house will be the priest, and this house will continue to be the priest. But now the Lord declares, and the word declare is to clearly say these words, right? And clearly say, and it says, "Far be it from me." Now, far be it from me. I think it is. I would say we need to be very clear. The word declare here and declare here is the same. It means that something is going to be very seriously wrong. Clearly decree, clearly say, be it far from me. I think this one is there's an interjection. I guess you can say, let it not be, right? Let it not be. Let what not be? Let these words, right? These words not be. That is what far be it from me says. Well, these words do not apply. So can God, after he says all these things about Aaron, now say about Eli? God is not talking about Aaron. God is now talking about Eli. He says, for those who honor me. Again, the word honor. And it is not just honor. It means to put God as more important. It's the same complaint. It's about Eli. Eli treated the sons as more important than God. And so that was the offense of Eli. It's really a grievous offense for a priest. And so for those who honor me, I will honor. And those who despise me, I will lightly esteem. Now, what does this mean? We need to just break this down very quickly. The word despise, treat as worthless. Treat as worthless. Where Eli is considering his sons more important, and if Eli considers the sons more important than God, then God would be of less value. And so when it's less value, it would be less worth. And if the actions are shown that the sons are more important than God, then God is saying, you are treating me, you're despising me. You are treating me as nothing. You are in contempt of me. You are disregarding me as God. Now, that is how serious God takes it. It is not just merely, oh, you just honor your son more. That's not the point. The effect, I hope that it impresses upon us, is that when we place something above God, then we are not treating God as God. It is equivalent probably to idolatry, that sons are more important than God. And so God says, I will do this to you. And I will treat you. Treat as trifle. Now, what do you mean treat as trifle? It means treat as light, as small. What else can we say? Well, I guess to the point of nothing. If you treat me as worthless, I will treat you as nothing. The priesthood is so important in the eyes of God. And God is saying, if you don't put me there, then why do I care? And so God says that this is a principle that God is placing. Those who honor God, God will honor. Those who despise God or treat God as worthless, God will treat as nothing. That would be how verse 30 is read. So verse 31 says this. And these kinds of wording, these kinds of expression is very common of a future prophecy. It says, behold. Now, behold is an attention grabber, right? Attention. But more importantly is see, look. That is what behold means. You can actually see it. It's not going to be quiet. It will be very loud. It will be very clear. The days are coming. The days will come when I will break your strength and the strength of your father's house, so that there will not be an old man in your house. Now, let's break this down a little bit. The days are coming. Future means it's not here yet, right? That's how Hebrew is used an expression. So whenever you have prophecies in place, you can read a lot of these expressions in the book of Jeremiah, Isaiah, the book of Ezekiel. And this is one of the earliest times where you say, behold, the days are coming, or behold, the days will come. When and who is doing this? God. Understand that God is the one making the action. I will break. Now, this word here, break, it literally means break, to cut into two, right? It means to chop off. It has this kind of idea to fell a tree. This is the word break. It's not break your arm, but literally an idea of cutting your strength in two. Now, why does this word use strength? The word strength here is arm, or the forearm. The forearm. And in the Bible, the right hand is authority. Your forearm, right? Your forearm is the part of your body that is doing action, right? Doing action. And so what it means is this is where you are exerting your strength, transferring to the forearm, and you can now execute certain things. And God says, I'm going to cut it into two. I'm going to chop it off. And what does that mean? It means that you have no more arm. You cannot do anything anymore. And here the strength, the arm of your father's house. What is your father's house? And this one does not mean Aaron. This means Eli's father's house. Right? Eli's father's house. Eli's father must also be a priest, right? Your father's house, so that there will not be, how would you say, this word is, this word means, it will not be, right? That I think is a good word. It will not be an old man in your house. In your house means your dynasty. Eli's dynasty, right? Eli's dynasty means his descendants. It's about his descendants now. And what it says, what about his descendants? Well, his descendants right here is 2 sons. And so this is a very poetic way of saying something, isn't it? So God says, in your house, there won't be an old man. What's going to happen? It means that before he becomes old, he will die, which means that he won't become an old man. That's all it says. Both the sons is now predicted that the days are going to come. Not yet. The sons are still running about doing all this bad things and causing havoc to the house of God. And God says, yes, the days are coming. And I will break your strength. To an old man, the sons are the strength of the father. In an oriental expression, that the virility of a man is demonstrated in the presence of the sons. And God is saying there will not be an old man in your house, in an indirect way of saying your house is not going to continue because your sons will die. So you will see the distress of my dwelling in spite of all the good that I will do for Israel, and an old man will not be in your house forever. So what is God really saying here? So in a very picturesque way, very poetic way, right? Very poetic, you will see the oppression. Who is doing the oppression? Well, the sons, right? You will see the oppressions of my house. This word here is my house. Again, I want to point out to you this mantra, right? God's house, God's rules. You break God's rules, God will break you. I guess that's in a more cruder way, right? They are oppressing God's house in spite of all the good things that I will do for Israel, and God will continue to be good to Israel. And understand this, how good is that? The tabernacle will continue to become the temple. All right. Here in Shiloh, we'll move all the way to Jerusalem. And he repeats himself, an old man will not be in your house forever. Now, again, the word forever literally means all the days. All the days, right? The word forever means all the days. This is not olam, this is all the days. And what does that mean? It means that it really hints to Eli, that the days that he will see, the sons will not be old, right? Now, how is that going to play out? We don't know, but in the next couple of chapters, we'll see that, right? But basically, this is a judgment of God, and it is coming, right? It's coming. It's in the future. Verse 33. Yet I will not cut off every man of yours from my altar, so that your eyes will fail and your soul grieve. Now, what does that mean? You see, this is an A and a B. God says that, see, this is what God says. You have Eli, and he has 2 sons, right? But not every man of yours will be cut off. Now, the word cut off is karat, put to an end, right? Put to an end. Not every man, which means that in some of the sons there are grandsons and so on, right? And so who is going to be cut off? These two, but not these ones. These ones will continue because the name of Eli will be perpetuated, but not by his strength. It will be the strength of the son. And so this is what God says: I will not cut off every man of yours from my altar, which means that these ones will continue to be priests. They will continue to be priests. And all the increase of your house will die in the prime of life, which means that they are not about to, how should we say, they will not be dying off a very old man. I guess that's probably what we can say, right? They will serve, but they will die. Not as old as Eli, right? Not as old as Eli. Now, from here, we have two names, Hophni and Phinehas, right? Phinehas would be these two sons. So let's take a look at what verse 34 and 35 actually says. Now, 34 and 35 are what we call prophecies, right? 34 says this: this will be the sign to you which will come concerning your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas. On the same day, both of them will die. Now, these are all very clear events. And this word sign, the word sign is oath, right? Oath. And it is visible. All signs of God are visible. That there is no ambiguity. When it happens, it will happen exactly the way that it is said. So God is giving a sign. Now, in Hebrew terms, it is very common. God gives a sign. When you look at the sign and when it comes to pass, you know God has acted. It is about the two sons, very specific, Hophni and Phinehas. And this is what's going to happen. On the same day, both will die. This is the sign. Now, if only one died, it's not a sign, but two must die. And so look at this. On the same day, number one, both will die. Both of them, number two, will die, number three. So all three conditions must be fulfilled to make the sign true. If not, then it's not true. Then that's not the fulfillment. So when God says it, and truly, Eli only had two sons. And if Eli only had two sons and both will die, that is a very serious judgment upon Eli and his house. And God is telling him that is going to happen. They will not die old. They will die young. Now, beyond the two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, God says, I will raise up for myself a faithful priest who will do according to what is in my heart. Sounds quite familiar. Now, later on, when we talk about David, right? He's the one who is after God's heart. So this is a faithful priest who will do according to what is in my heart. The word faithful one who calls himself to be truthful, to uphold God's rules. That is what faithful priests actually mean. And so the description is do according to what is in my heart. What is in God's heart? It's given. God's rules, the Torah. Everything that God wants to be done, the priest will be ultimately faithful to carry it out. And then it says, in my soul. Now, understand, this word soul is nephesh. And so, does God have a heart? Does God have a soul? But this is a poetic form. This, yes, that God has a being. He was and is to come. God exists. Because he exists, he is living. There is a description of a nephesh. There is life in God. There is God's heart, and God's heart would be his mind. What is in God's mind? His rules. What he wanted them to do. That would be God's heart. God's soul, his very character. Okay? His very character. His breath, his nafash. His mind character, he would uphold. See, God's rules reflects God's character. And when the priest carries out God's rules, people will see the character of God. And so God says, and I will build him an enduring house. Means that the house will also be firm. Right? An enduring house is the house will be firm. What do you mean be firm? This word and this word faithful are tied together. They are together. A firm priest with a firm house. An enduring priest with an enduring house. So his house, his dynasty, the children that he have will continue to do this, to carry out the rules of God, to demonstrate the character of God. And he will walk before my anointed always. Who is my anointed? This is another, right? Another prophecy. This would be the king. And this is future, right? Future. It's in that day. It will come. And I will raise. It's all in the future. And God will raise a faithful priest. Now, when we look into the Chronicles, we look into the book of First Samuel later on. We look into the book of First Kings. Let me just close by alluding to this before we get to verse 36. Because it is so important for us to realize that this faithful priest later on is a priest by the name of Zadok. And he is in the period of David, not Saul. And so this would be the king. The future king is David, and the faithful priest is Zadok. It will not be from Eli. Now, what is happening here is from Eli, Zadok is from Eleazar, right? Eleazar. Itmar is where we have Eli further down the line. Eli would have Phinehas, and all the way down we have another character named Aviatar. And I would ask you to read First Kings, chapter 2, verse 27. And we won't read it for lack of time, but it's something that I think it would be very interesting if you read it. And In a nutshell, Abiathar from the descendant of Eli. Remember, God says, your sons may die, but your dynasty will continue to serve me as priest. And yes, Abiathar was serving Solomon as priest as well. So at the time of Solomon, in 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 27, Solomon removed Abiathar as priest. Remember that, because verse 36 comes into play. Everyone who is left in your house will come and bow down to him, Zadok, for a piece of silver or a loaf of bread, and say, now this is food, it's for food, because the priest, Zadok, will take care of the priesthood. And the descendants of Eli were continuing to be priesthood until Abiathar. Until Abiathar. And this would be a descendant of Eli. Again, read 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 27. When Abiathar was removed, he did not get any money nor bread because he is no longer part of the priesthood. The king removed Abiathar and descendants from the priesthood. And this is the prophecy that please assign to me one of the priest officers so that I may eat a piece of bread. The word assign me is to include me. And the idea here is that the priest's meals are no longer assigned to Abiathar onwards. So this is a prophecy one day that he will beg for bread. He will beg for bread, that he is asking Zadok, or to him, the faithful priest, to be included in any of the priest offices so that he will get to eat. This is to say that one day, in the line of the priesthood of Eli, it will come to an end. And with this, we end our session today as we conclude verse 36 of 1 Samuel chapter 2.